Pesach, Sameach, happy Passover here, the Chag HaMatzot, Sameach, Chag HaMatzah. Here we're at the second day of unleavened bread, and we had left off on the RastafariJews. Also check out the streaming on Rastafari Israelites, as well the YouTube channel. So we had left off actually on RastafariJews, Yehudim, with the video about does Passover, does it celebrate the murder of millions of Africans, aka Egyptians? We're going to do another video. I think we said so even in the first vlog up there, that we're going to do another video say that it does not. But let's just move on with what actually, actually occurred according to the scripture. How many, right, the Hebrew black baby boys, how many Hebrew boys were murdered before the Exodus? How many Hebrew boys, right, to put it more into the context, like right here, right, we have Jawanza Kunjufu, his book right here. Sure, many ones and ones have checked it out, right? It was a conspiracy, right? A conspiracy, right? Just bring his name right there. Conspiracy, right? A conspiracy to do what? To destroy black boys. This is what we have within the narrative in the Hebrew scripture. Now, first of all, let's just point this out. In ancient Egypt, from a true Hebrew, true Israelite perspective, there was the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right, like anything else in this world, this life, right? The good, right, and the bad. We'll put it in the context of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the question is this. Because first I actually looked it up. I said, let me look it up. Right? Of course, how do we qualify that? We say, well, how many, Africans? They wasn't even called Africans at the time. So just scratch that, wipe that out right there. Let's put it into perspective. And also what we have here is, for lack of a better word, based on the artifacts that we see, we have a black on black situation here. This is the ideal black on black situation. Now, other ones and their versions of Christianity or Judaism, they might not agree, but for I, for over 400 plus years, even experientially, we know what the reality be, right? So the word, the scripts, it speaks to I, right? We, the once lost, now found, black and brown, the Beta Israel, especially over here in the West, the Beta Israel of the West, especially over the 400 years, and even many of the circumstances and situations and the consequences or the curses, right, are still manifest. But things are getting better because ones are waking up, ones are Shema'ah Yisrael, hearing the word. So how many? No one really focuses on that aspect of it right there. Right? It's in the first part of the second book of Moshe, the Hebrew book that is called Exodus. Let's just go here to the scripts for a moment, to the scripts, to the word, right, to the law, right, to the law and to the testimony. So right here, where it says that if it be a, what is it? Is it a man child? Does it say man child or male child? How does KJV, right? How does KJV bring this out? Let's go over here. Let's go back over here. So here we go right here, right? First, okay, but save the men, children. Okay, it's right in here. Let's bring this up. Okay, let's actually take that off. So here's the section, Exodus chapter, right? Exodus chapter 1, right there, right? So in Exodus chapter 1, let's just zoom in right here and heal up the Shifras and the Puas, right? The Hebrew Midwives right there, the Shifras and the Puas. So here we're in Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. Also, Baba Dick Gregory is like a rabbi for many of I, we the black Jews. He has a very, very good book. Do we have the hard copy over here? I'm going to show you the cover. Like to go through his Bible Tales. He did this work called Bible Tales, right? Bible Tales. I think we actually had ordered another copy of it. I'm going to share it right here on the screen right here. I don't know if there's a PDF available, but it's a very, very good work, Very, very good work. He also has some other books as well, some very good works as well. Let's bring this up right here and just show the book cover right here. Okay, here we go right here. Bible. There we go. Right? This is Dick Gregory's Bible Tales. Right? Because he goes into like a commentary, interesting commentary right here. Right? Bible Tales. Picturing himself almost like as a Moshe. Right, as a Moshe, so to speak, right? So yeah, Dick Gregory's Bible Tales, very, very good work, and we love his midrashic, like a midrash. The Yehudis and others who study Hebraically will understand what we're saying by this. The midrash, or the Beit Midrash, right? The Hebrews, we say Beit Midrash, the house of study. The midrash is like the study, right? The rasha, right? From darash, to seek, we say like to seek him. Right? Those who seek Elohim, those who study his revealed revelation, Ha-Torah, and overall, we could say the scriptures, right? So we have the Midrash. Among the Muslim Mohammedan, they said Madrasha. You might have heard about madrashas, they're schools. They get that basically from the Hebrew, from that root right there. But this midrash that he does, he goes into like a commentary. He points to the area of scripture and he touches on some interesting commentaries on the scriptural biblical narrative, especially in Exodus, and also black peoples here in the Americas and the Caribbean. I would liken it actually to what's that book called? From Babylon to Timbuktu, Rudolph R. Windsor, and the other one as well, Valley of the Dry Bones. Those particular works, From Babylon to Timbuktu. I would say book one. In other words, that's the first book I would recommend ones and ones to get a better overall context, right, of our history overview from there, from east over here to being the Beta Israel over here in the west, as well as a follow-up one, especially as it connects with the curses or consequences, Deuteronomy chapter 28, right? Particularly focusing on verse 68, the enslavement trade. That particular work is Babylon, what's it called? Valley of the Dry Bones. The Valley of the Dry Bones, I think the consequences, it goes into the curses, showing how these consequences of disobedience are manifest even within our 400-year plus history over here in the Americas and the Caribbean. So he goes through a really good, commentary, right? And we've read and studied a lot of ancient and some modern, Jewish, Judaic, Hebraic commentaries. And the spirit of what Dick Gregory, Baba Dick Gregory, God bless his soul, rest in peace and shalom and rise in glory. Baba Dick Gregory, Rabba Dick Gregory, here with this particular work right here, Dick Gregory's Bible Tales. Seek to even go into maybe one or two, hopefully over this Pesach, Passover season, right? And it's in particular of his work here that it drew my attention to doing a follow-up video, this one right here, asking the question, how many Hebrew boys, right? Hebrew boys were murdered. They were murdered, right? They were murdered. So people talk about how many, Passover celebrates the murder of Africans. To us, we the black Jews and we black people who identify, right, with our people on the continent that is called today Africa, and they want to say, oh, this is anti-black. No, you don't really understand the reality, right, of the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know what I mean? As Ayabingi said, death to black and white down pressers. Does it make it any better if our down presser, right, is a black man? If somebody is down pressing us and they are black? Even they will say we as the Hebrews and Israelites, according to their twisted, distorted view of the scripture, were down pressing others. They would even say that with the Canaanites, so forth and so on. We'll touch on that as well. But here, to the law, right, and to the testimony. So here we have Shemot, or Exodus, Yetziat Mitzrayim. Here we have Exodus chapter 1, verse 15, and the king of Egypt, the Melech Mitzrayim, Melech. But this Melech here of Mitzrayim was more like a Molech, They said the boys and children would sacrifice right, to these Elohim Acharim, other people's Elohims, latter day Elohim, backward Elohim, pseudo trinities, false gods, these God constructs of the other nations, right? But here we have the Melech, right? The Melech, proper word in Hebrew for King Melech, but then we turn it up, right, in Molech, the Molech, right, the Molech, because here we also have the sacrifice, right, of the Hebrew boys, the Hebrew male children, the killing of the male children, the boy children. This is genocide. Genocide is a genocide. Oh, by the way, did you know that the word genocide was coined in the modern, you could say, English and political language because of the words of Karamawi Haile Selassie, because of the words of Haile Selassie the first, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, root of David. Did you know that the term genocide, right, genocide, and you'll find it within the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, the King of Kings, the League of Nations, the League of Gentiles, the League of Goyim, when he went before to plead the cause of Jah people before the League of Gentiles, the League of Heathen, right? Circa, what was that, 1930, right, 1936. All right, 1936. What he said in the Royal Amharic, what he said in the Afro-Semitic language of Amharic, which is Afro-Semitically related to the Hebrew, they both are Afro-Semitic languages. He said, destroying a seed. Destroying a seed. The seed. The word seed is race. Some people say, oh, there's not race in the Bible. That's because they're deep ending on KJV, on King James, and not going to the source code. Get to the source code, get to the source code. When we get to the source code, we find that the word zerah is a word for race. The seed of Abraham, the race of Abraham, the seed. So when His Majesty spoke about the fascists, right, the Antichrist, the Romanists, the fascists, right, Rome, very same people who crucified HaMoshiach, Yeshua. It says that Antichrist is an ancient Judaic, Hebraic teaching that Antichrist will come from the people, right, will come from the people who crucified HaMoshiach, Yeshua, Robenu. So who's the one? People say it's the Jews that crucified him. No, it was some of our Boule religious leaders, who were in bed with Herod, the Herodians, and they were in bed with the, with the Romans and, like the Boule and a lot of ones and ones amongst even our black people. This is why Ayabingi is right and accurate. It said, deaf to black and white down presser. The judgment must be non-partial, right? Non-partial. So here it says, and the king, the Melech of Mitzrayim, right? Molech, put that as a footnote. He's a Melech, yes, but his behavior is very Molechish, right? He spake to the Hebrew midwives. Right? Calling the midwives, the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shifra, and the name of the other was Puah. So here we have the example of two Hebrew midwives. As we say, call the midwives. You ever seen that series? It's an interesting series, this English, BBC, British series, right? Call the midwives. Well, here we have to we're recalling the Hebrew midwives, right? Because in our Exodus narrative, it's not just the Mandem that are bigged up, right? Like Moshe, right? And the sons of Israel, but also the midwives, the Hebrew midwives. The name of one was Shifra, right? Shifra, one of the two Hebrew midwives who were ordered by Pharaoh. The term Pharaoh or Pharaoh means great house, the great house. It's like they say today, the White House. The White House says, the White House reported the White House, declared the White House, such and such. Well, we know it's not the house, the building. We know it's not the building, but it's those who, you could say, work there, who have power, authority, control. And here in Mitzrayim, here in Egypt, in the narrative here, we're in a whole new dispensation. The period of time that the Hebrews and the Israelites in Egypt, roughly the 12th dynasty, Egypt to the 18th dynasty. So here, one of the two Hebrew midwives ordered by Pharaoh, the great house, the administration in ancient Mitzrayim, right, to kill, really to murder, right? Because it wasn't just kill, just kill. Like one could kill, and killing is not necessarily murder, and murder is not necessarily killing, right? But here we have murder. They have to kill, but to murder, murderer, right? This Pharaoh and his whole administration, blood was on their shoulder. So Jah, our power, had to demonstrate right here. Right? In ancient Egypt, it was nothing personal. It wasn't against the Egyptians because they were black, because the Hebrews and Israelites in modern day racial terminology would be considered people of color, black people, right? So here we have the Pharaoh who ordered, right, the midwives to assist him, to be his accomplices in the murder of the male children, right? The black baby boys, the black baby, the black males, the black male, black male. What do we mean? Black male? You mean male or male? Right? To kill all the black male children born to the Hebrews, right? But they disobeyed. They did not obey the Pharaoh. They did not obey this particular Pharaoh or this particular administration, right? And this particular family, right? We're talking about the Hatshepsut, right? Hatshepsut, the real Hatshepsut, because there's a lot of fake Egyptology, archaeology out there. I don't know if a lot of people really know about it. It's being discovered, but some of the pro-blacks don't want to really, weigh in on that. But we're talking about the period of time of, after Ahmose, right? And the Tutmose period, this particular period in ancient Egypt, right? But this is a little before it here in Exodus. This is the beginning, right? The beginning of the drama here. And he said, when y'all do the office of a midwife. So the office of the Yalad, to bring to bear, to bring to birth, right? To the Hebrew woman. To the who? To the Hebrew woman, right? To the Ibri, right? Ibri, the one from beyond, right? The one from beyond, right? The crosses over, the one from and see, or the Aperiu in ancient Rayen Komet, the Rayen Komet, the language, the speech of the Egyptians, right? And see them up on the stools. And it was a birthing stool, something very interesting we saw right here. Let's just share this right here about the birthing stools right here. Looking at the archaeology, right? Where's that birthing stool right there? There. The birthing stool. There we go, right there. The birthing stool, right? One example right here of the Egyptian birthing stools, right? The birthing stool. Wow, this is interesting. This is from the 18th dynasty, circa 1500. Which, just according to that timeline, that would be like within, say, the 100-year, about 100 and maybe 40 or so years before the Exodus, according to the comparative times, because there's a lot to be desired with some of the timing. But other events, other archaeology, we can put both from the scripture description, going to the source code, and also going to the to the ancient Egyptian art and facts. So here is this art and fact right here. This is a Mitzrayim birth stools, these birth stools right here. When you see them on the birth stools, here the birth stool constructed in wood and certainly portable, seems similar to the stool called for by the Hippocratic, where they got it from, the Hippocratic, the the early day Greeks were black and brown people, the Keftiu, the Ionian, Javanite, Yonawian people, the Javanite, the original Ionians. But then we have the later day Graikoi, Hellas, the children of hell, Hellas people, who had took that over. Similar to what happened in America with the Anglo-American people, and similar to what happened with Australia. and also South Africa, if we must say, but called for by the Hippocratic doctor of superfectation aid as an alternative to the large and cumbersome delivery chair. So instead of a large and cumbersome delivery chair, there was these stools. No wooden examples have survived from the Greek world. This is interesting. No wooden examples have survived. In fact, let's just talk about, since people always ask us, where's the Hebrew this and the Hebrew that? Well, where's Julius Caesar's body? Have you done any DNA analysis on Julius Caesar? How about Mark Antony? How about any of the Roman emperors or any of these people that you be telling us about? Where's their real archaeology? How come there's more documents, right, for the Old Testament Hebrew scripture as well as the New Testament, the Koine Greek scripture, than there is for Roman and Greek history combined? They don't really want to talk about that. They want to say, oh, well, it's not really real unless it's archaeology. There's not a lot of archaeology, right, on a lot of things that you believe in popular Greco-Roman philosophy. But seeing the world we're in today, I guess it makes sense that you would overlook that fact, right? So here we have a pregnant woman, or more better than saying pregnant, because pregnant is defined as a disease. Go look it up in the medical stuff as a disease, right? Guess it's interpretive, but more correctly, a woman with child draped and veiled is seated on a birth stool. So here we have this woman over there, or statue of a woman over there on the birth stool. So this is what the Sutan Bet, right, is speaking about right here. When you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew woman and see them up on the stools, if it be a son. When you see them on the oben, notice that the oben in Hebrew is like a wheel, a disc, like a potter's wheel. The potter, Jehovah the potter. Kanum, you said Kanum from the ancient Mitzrayim, the wisdom of the Egypts. Well, the potter's wheel, bearing stool, midwife's stool, the midwife's stool. All right. So here it's interesting getting to the Strong's definition, right? A pair of stones, usually dual, right? So the original idea was like two stones, because we have the eben in Hebrew. Here we have the oben, a potter's wheel or a midwife's stool, consisting alike of two horizontal discs with a support between. So here we have this oben as a wheel or a stool, right, coming from the eben, a stone, large or small, a stone, right? So here. So he said, if it be a son, if it be a what? A ben, if it be a ben, if it be a son. Now, ben is a son, but the son, of course, it can also be a grandson, a ben, a child, a member of a group, a son, a male child, right, which could be a grandchild, right? Children, plural, male and female. So in the plural sense, it can be, male and female. You can see this right here, just to go through some of the basics. But now here, the Strongs bring this out that's very good, since the root word ben is from bana, right? Bana, right? One of the Hebrew roots is to build, right? And then we have bain, which means to discern. Right? Discern, to understand, to be able to tell the distinction, to distinguish between this and that is understanding. But here we have the ben as a builder. I want you to note the word builder of the family name. So you talk about, well, how come, all this is happening to the black male and what they're doing against the black men, right? And the genocide against the Zakar, the male, the black male. Is it because they won't be under black male? Which male? The male or male? Notice Babylon, right? Tricky language, ain't it? A son, a builder of the family name in the widest sense of literal or figurative relationship. So one might be a ben, right? We say B'nai Elohim, right? B'nai Elohim, we be the sons of the children, right, of Elohim, right, in that figurative or allegorical sense. But then we also have the literal and the figurative, the phi cycle, the physical, a physical child, or in we say the metaphysical or the allegorical, the parabological sense of it, figurative sense, including grandson, subject, nation, quality, and then it goes into a lot of other kind of builds here as it's used throughout the KJV, right? So here, Chan, what we just did, we just went off of that. Excuse me, brothers and sisters. Let's see if we can bring that back up. Right, let's go back over here to second page and down here to, let's see, Exodus 17. There we go, right, 16. Right, so if it be a son, if it be a male child, a male child. So there's some sexism here too, right? In ancient Mitzrayim, there's some sexism here. They're not saying if it be any Hebrew child, but if it be a male child. So the targeting of the male child ain't nothing new under the sun, right? Other nations have done this to some of their enemies, to wipe out, that seed, wipe out that race, to commit genocide, right? The killing, the murdering of a seed of a race. If it be a son, then ye shall kill him. Basically, then ye shall moot, right? Use the word moot, muta, moot, right? To die, to kill. Really, the word moot actually means like dead on, right? To die or to dead on him. You will dead on, right? The boy child, the male child. Ain't nothing new under the shemesh, tachat shemesh. But if it be a daughter, a bat, right? A bat, it says bath here, but bat, if it be a bat. If it be a daughter, a bat, right? If it be a daughter, right? Then what should you do if it be a daughter? It says, if it be a daughter, then she shall live. She shall live. So the son, dead on the black male, right? Dead on the black male. And if it's a daughter, well, let the daughter live. Reminds me right here. I wanted this Pharaoh, did he read? What was that book, How to Make a Slave? The Willie Lynch paper? I guess it's the same evil, the same spirit of evil, whether it's in a black man or it's in a white man. You know what I'm saying? But here we're dealing with a black on black situation. That's why we ask the question, how many Hebrew, boys, black Hebrew boys were murdered before the Exodus? All right, so we can understand what the Exodus is really about. And it's not so much about, it's against Egypt and Kemet because Kemet is black people and they're the first and they're the ones who did everything. Boast, brag. Rahab. Settle down, Rahab. Verse 17, but the midwives feared. They reverence, right? Yareh, they reverence, right? Yareh, they were in awe, they were in fear, right? They were morally, right, reverent. They knew something was wrong here just to dead on the male children, but keep the female children alive. And it's the Pharaoh, it's the great house of Mitzrayim that already was showing their animosity to immigrants. You see, that term Hyksos comes down to also mean immigrant in ancient Egyptian context. We had Mose with the Hyksos, or you mean with the Edomites? With the Edomites, you mean the Edomites, the Hyksos, those shepherd kings were driven out, right? But then the Hebrews were still, in a sense, so to speak, left behind. But the midwives, that would explain why John says that, well, the Edomites, they have come into their inheritance, but the children of Israel were still yet to come into their inheritance because we still stay there for some hundreds of years, right? But the midwives, right? At least a little more than 100. The midwives, they feared, they respected, they reverenced Elohim, right? They reverenced the true good, the true God, right? And did not as the Melech of Mitzrayim, as the Molech, right, of Mitzrayim, commanded them. But they saved the men children, right? The men children, the Yeled. You see Yeled? Yeled now, right? We have Ben is like a son. And then the Yeled is like a child. The Yeled is like a child. It's like a boy in that sense. Child, son, boy, offspring, youth, right? Right? Okay. That's interesting. Apostate Israelites, apostate. Well, apostate means to fall away, right? So he wanted to kill them so they would fall away from Kol Yisrael because he was very concerned. Now notice when you go to the beginning of Shemot, Exodus, when we read in a study of comprehension, we see that it was the people of the Bnei Yisrael, the people of the sons of Israel. They were known as the Hebrews. The Hebrews is not directly speaking of racial terms as many other Hebrews, Israelites like to infer, but it's speaking of spirituality terms. right? The spirituality. We have Avram Ha-Ibri. Avram is the first, we could say, right, of the line, the lineage Ha-Ibri. He is the one who crossed over from the Elohim Acharim, right, from the Elohim who are no Elohim, right, the backward Elohim, other people's Elohim, to Ha-Elohim, Ha-Elohim, the true Elohim, right? But here, simply put, the lad, the offspring, right? But save the men children specifically, right? But they save the men children alive. So the ancient Mitzrayim, ancient Kemetic, or during this particular Paro, when you say the Paro or the Pharaoh, we're speaking about the great house. And even that right there can be deciphered according to the Ra'in Chomet, Ra'in Chemet, the Ra'in Chomet, or some might say the Metunet from the ancient Egyptian. This can be deciphered from the ancient Egyptian linguistics, because even ancient Egyptian is Afro-Semitic, Afro-Asiatic. Right, it's a part of this. It's interesting how Hebrew, right, Ge'ez, Ethiopic, they all are in like a family. Even the Shemitic, right, the Western Shemitic is in a family of languages. This means that those peoples, according to the scripts coming from Noach, the Ankh man, Noah, the Ankh man, right, and his Merkabah, the ship, right? Even coming down from there, it shows that these people were not like the racist table of nations. That table of nations that a lot of people point to, yes, it is true what the Bible is saying. These people went to those regions, but they're not the same as the people we find in most of these areas today. Let's just point that out right there, right? And the king of Mitzrayim called for the midwives. He's calling for the midwives. He called for the midwives and said to them, why have ye y'all done this thing and have saved the men children alive? They did not consent, right, to the conspiracy to destroy the Hebrew baby boys, right? Now, it's interesting when we start to put this into the context of what's happening even now and has been going on, right, for a good moment, right now. So the countering the conspiracy, right? So what we have in the Exodus is really the ancient Hebrew countering the conspiracy. That's what the Exodus is. It's countering the conspiracy. The ancient Mitzrayim, Kemetic, at this time, in this time period, this event horizon, conspiracy to destroy the Hebrew boys, right? To destroy the Hebrew male children, right? To whom more is given, more is required, right? So the conspiracy right here. So just to kind of just zoom in on this, to put this front and center, because this is an aspect of the narrative that is rarely, if ever, gone into. Right? Some people think that, it's talking about like, black Egyptians and white Jews. No, that's not so. Right? Some people think it's talking about maybe black Egyptians and white, black Jews and white Egyptians. No, it was black on black, which shows that the ancient people did not see things in the latter day racial, this racial idea that is actually the product of the times of the Gentiles. Right, the times of the Gentiles, the times of these artificial nation states. A little bit more right here, verse 19. The midwives said, and then they asked, why have you done this? Why haven't you obeyed? The Molech is asking, why haven't you obeyed to sacrifice these Hebrew boys into the Hapi? The Hapi is what they call the Nile. And there was a netcher or a netter over that particular, Nile River. If you know anything about the Nile was, I think, Baba Dick Gregory, he brings it out in his commentary. The Nile was like the source of it's like the economic, how can we say? It was the Nile was the source of the economy. The economy had a lot to do with the Nile River. Right? Both the Nile River, in the sense of coming from south to north movement, and then we have the river, the sea, the Red Sea. So when goods needed to go from north to south, they went down the Red Sea, right? If they needed to come south to north, it could use the Nile River. The Nile River was like the engine of the economy. It was very important to the economy. And the key to the ancient Mitzrayim economy was the Kui land, the Kush land, or Tobia or Ethiopia. Right? This was necessary. The Kemet came from Tobia, from Ethiopia. That's that reddish, brown, dark, rich, nutrient-rich ground. The Adama, in the Hebrew, the Adama. In ancient Egypt, they called it the Komet, the Kumut, the Kemet, right? The Chem, because it was so rich in the soil, the nutrients, and they used this to farm, right? So the connection of the Nile, even right there with the inundation, bringing down the rich topsoil, the agricultural ground for their livelihood, for their food, right? The food basically came from inner Tobia, inner Kush, inner Africa, as it's called today, went down the Nile, right? So the Nile was very important to their economy. So we can see and read this here for basic knowledge of ancient Mitzrayim, right? And some of what is can be verified to be true based on their own testimony. The Nile was a part of their religious economics, the economics and the religious, spiritual, moral, cultural ideas were all connected. There was like, people talk about separation of church and state. This is a Western Gentile, Latter-day Gentile idea, because truthfully speaking, wherever the Gentiles, especially we could say the white European, so-called white European Gentiles, it seems like when they start to dabble with religion and they start to dabble with politics, history has proven the wars of Europe. Wars, wars, wars. Yet we have other peoples in other regions, right? And they did not have these sort of racial, religious type of wars. Right? We're not saying that other people didn't fight because they had differences, but nothing on the scale of what we witness in whitewash European history, right? Even coming down to these modern so-called latter-day days and times. So maybe separation of church and state for maybe the Gentile, I don't know, maybe for them, but that was not the ancient Egyptian way. It was all connected. So just the significance of the Nile to the economy, the Hapet, called the Hapet, right, to the economy. So to cast the Hebrew boys, the male children, into the river, it's almost like ones and ones saying, sacrifice your children for the good of the economy. For the good of the economy. Sacrifice your boy, your male children. Oh, keep the girls alive. The question is, what were they trying to keep the girls alive for? Very interesting. Why they want to keep the girls alive, the woman alive? Well, we can ask this question today. Isn't it similar to the question today as well? When we see the same spiritual Egypt, right? The same spiritual Egypt circumstance and situation. So the midwives said to Pharaoh, what did they say to the great house? They said, because the Hebrew women are not as the Mitzrayim women, the Mitzrayim anashim, they're not the same. For they are lively. Now here's KJV. For they are lively and are delivered error, like let's just say like before the midwives come into them. So they are lively. That's the H2422, right? They are chaye. This is an interesting expression, ain't it? They are chaye. They are chaye. They are vigorous. They are lively. They having the vigor, the joie de vie, you know what I mean? The joy of life, the vigor of life. They're lively. They're not just sitting down, they feel it coming on and they already are, while they're even feeling the birthing pangs, they're about the business of bringing forward their youth, right? Bringing forward their child. Right? Reminds me of the so-called old like Negro woman, our ancestral woman over here, the Beta Israel over in the West. Many of the testimonies as well, where, the woman, she might have had to give birth by herself, over in a swamp or somewhere away from Massa, cut the cord, do all of that. And by the time anyone comes along, she got the baby up in the swaddling cloth and, she's all cleaned up and everything like that. By the time the midwife finally comes forward. That's what the Hebrew woman was saying. So this is also a compliment right? The Hebrew midwives were saying concerning the Hebrew woman, for they are lively, they are vigorous, they are alive, they are active. The word chaye from chai means life, right? Chayim, lachayim, to life, to lives. It also means activity. Life is like movement, activity, right? They have life, right? They remain alive. The mother sustained her life, and she also sustained that baby's life, right? Live prosperously, live forever, the quicken, the restored to life, breaking down some of the Hebrew usages of this. But it's almost like saying that the Hebrew woman were lively and active, right? While it's like the Egyptian woman, no doubt, because Egypt was a great place, and it's like the Western Gentile world, like how people in the so-called third world, they deal with things, because of the lack. They say that necessity is the mother of invention, right? Necessity, because of necessity they were able to be more lively, while in the West, ones can't really do anything because they have to click on a remote, or they need to press a button, or they need to depend on somebody else to do it. This is the way Mitzrayim was, Egypt. And we're looking at this in strictly anthropological, social terms. People are people under the sun, for they are lively and are delivered, right? Yalad, they give birth, right? They give birth, terem, before, right? Before that, the midwives, right? The midwives come into them. Now, note this right here. Here in verse 20 and 21, check this out. Therefore, Elohim, Hailahim, the power, true good, true God, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem, dealt well. He dealt well, right? Yatab. Now, Yatab is an interesting word. It's from Tab, Tawa, where we get Tob. Tob is good. And the archaic name of Ethiopia, Tobia. Yatab, Utopia, Utobi, right? Yatab means to be good, to be pleasing, to be well, right? So he did well. He made it well for them. He made figurative sense of the word yatab, to be happy, successful, right? Right? He made it well for them. He made it sound, beautiful, sound in the sense of healthy, good, tov. As ra'a is evil, but ra'a is bad, is ill, right? Unkind, not well. Tov is well, is good, is healthy. He made it what for them? He made it well. He dealt well, right? He dealt well with the midwives. And the people, ha'am, and your people multiplied, right? Multiplied, rabba. They became rabim, enough ones, right? As you can see, rabba, right? Rabba increased, right? They increase. Let's scroll down here to increase in whatever aspect, abundance, right? They increased in abundance. They increased enough people, and they waxed very mighty, me'od, enough, like very much, right? Atzam, or etzem, right? They became numerous, etzem, right? It's an interesting word, etzem, strong, numerous, etzem, right? Etzem, bound fast, powerful. The sense of it is a powerful, numerous, right? Then we have etzem, but notice the word etzem is bone. So we have etzem, right? Etzem, right? The etzem, and then we have atzem, right? We have the atzem right here, right? The atzam, right? Which means like to be vast, to be numerous, but the sense is to be strong. Like basically the link with bones is like they were strong bones. Now, of course, that may not make much sense, but they were able to keep their genealogical connection because of their multiplication. Right? When you study science, dividing and multiplying, they increase, etzem. And also having etzem in a figurative sense of the Hebrew, having good bones, it's like you have good DNA, you have good genetics. You have good DNA, you have good genetics. Bone, almost like the bone man connection, right? This bone are connected to that bone, right? So they wax very mighty, and it says, and it came to pass, because the midwives reverenced, respected Elohim, that he made them houses. Now, this is one of the key curious verses right here. He made them houses. What does it mean that he made them bayit? Bayit. Now notice there's a etymological Hebraically connection between bat, daughter, because these were daughters, the midwives, they were daughters of Yisrael, but we have bayit. So we have bat, daughter, and bayit, house. He made them houses, right? What does it mean by houses, right? Ones and ones went to those, they called on the Hebrew midwives. They called on the Hebrew midwives because their virtue was testified to. Don't think that that remained quiet for very long. Their virtue was testified to, right? Because notice that they counted what the great house, the administrations, like right now, over here in the Americas, the Caribbean, or even over in London and in upper Egypt, spiritual Egypt, over here in Americas, lower spiritual Egypt, it's the same way. What they have, the NSA, National or NH something, National Health something Service, NHS, you know, and they defied, right? Defined. And we see examples of that too, even with the COVID. There was a woman, I think an African, it sounded like maybe an African nurse or a doctor, you know, and she was talking about, you know, how to cure it, but was going against the prescriptions, right, that the Babylonian doctors, you know, were, you know, advising, you know, and these prescriptions that she was speaking about actually, you know, actually worked, right? So they countered, right? They countered the conspiracy to destroy the Hebrew baby boys. They countered that conspiracy, right? So the Exodus was all about countering, right, the conspiracy to destroy the Hebrew baby boys. That's what the Exodus was all about, right? So right here, let's just share this right here, okay? All right here, okay, this is some of the Dick Gregory's, you know, another thing about Dick Gregory too, he was advocating like having children. Right now we have this abortion epidemic. My answer to genocide, this particular article, if you can get a read of it, the bitter comic prescribes big families as effective black protests. Wow. Now this is an old article right here. Just got to zoom it in right here so you can see it front and center. He prescribes what? Big families. One time, black people used to also prescribe the same thing, big families. He seems to be one of those from the old school that kept to the tried and true. You know, Rabbi Dick Gregory. He said, my answer to genocide, remember the word genocide was a terminology that was coined in translating what Kadamawi Haile Selassie, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, the King of Kings of Ethiopia, had said before the League of Gentiles, the League of Nations, the League of Goyim, the League of Gentiles, because of what he said in the Amharic. The translator, in hearing the phraseology he used, had to resort to the phrase, bring into usage, genocide, gene, zer, side, killing a seed, destroying a race, killing a seed. So now when we think about that, we have to think about, well, what seed were Mussolini and the fascists and the Antichrist trying to destroy in Ethiopia? The Israelites of Ethiopia and the lion of the tribe of Judah. So here we have the bitter comic, as they say, Dick Gregory right here, his answer to genocide. Bitter comic prescribes big families as effective black protests. What happened to that? All right, what happened to that? The same thing happened as happened in Egypt, because if you study the decades, you know, different decades and dispensation here in America of I people, you can see that different decades or different dispensations was different. You know, people say, well, it's not the 60s no more. You remember the 70s, how the 70s seem to have a different spirit, right? The 80s seem to have a different spirit. The 90s seem to have something different. Sometimes when we study over time period of our ancestors' history, sometimes it may have gotten a little better. Sometimes it got a little worse, but it often went hand in hand with who was running, who's ruling the show, who is running society, who is the Pharaoh, who is the great house, who was in the White House, or in ancient Egypt, the White Walls, right? Who was in the White Walls? They actually called it the White Walls. It makes us wonder whether they named it the White House somehow from that ancient recall, that ancient memory. But it's the Spirit, it's the Holy Spirit that's bringing out the prophecy, right? As it's spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt, right? This city, this consciousness. Here This is another one right here. Birth of baby makes ninth addition to Dick Gregory's family. Ninth addition. Right here, you can see this right here. Dick Gregory, his wife Lillian, for the ninth time became proud parents recently with the birth of an 8-pound baby girl. Right, and it goes through it right here. Let's go down here. Something that's said right here. All right, an opponent of birth control. See, this is during the time when birth control was becoming like a very big thing, a talking point, where they were seeking to do the same thing that Pharaoh was seeking to do. The same thing. They saw the number of the people of the Bnei Yisrael increasing. And they said, we have to stop the rise, right, of the Beta Israel, of the West. Right? And then they went back in the 30s, they sought to stop the rise, right, of the Beta Israel of the East. Stop the rise of the conquering line of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. But they failed. Dick Gregory saw his new child immediately after birth, but had to leave town on a lecture tour. He said, I'll have one for her in a few days. What do you say right here? Oh, a name. Okay, a name right here. An opponent of birth control. Gregory contends that, quote, Planned Parenthood. You know, the Gnostics talk about how they give the names of the true. They give the names of the true to the false. Planned Parenthood. Get that right there. Planned Parenthood. It's more like planned genocide. He said campaigns actually represent a conspiracy by whites to perpetrate genocide on blacks. This is a very interesting write-up here, this article here. If you notice blacks, the B in blacks is cap, and the W in whites is lowercase. Usually they have it the other way around, don't you know? Or haven't you noticed that? But Planned Parenthood. Look at the oxymoronic statement, Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood. Oh, wait, what are you doing? You're getting rid of the child that would make you a parent? Oh, okay. So here's just an honor of Rabba, Baba Dick Gregory right here. Also, his wife, more strength, Yeshua Shalom. Yes, I. Right. So here, he spoke out about this. Now it's interesting because the ones who knew him and other activists that were speaking, like the truth to power, right? Yet he seemed to be one of the few. That actually, continued, right, to testify even to I time, right? His beautiful family right here, right? His response to that, right? But now, if it was left up to what? To Pharaoh, right? The Pharaoh of the genocide, right? The black baby boy genocide. If it was left up to, then that boy would be gone, and a lot of us would be gone, right? So here, this is the book right here, Dick Gregory's Bible Tales. Check it out. As we said, we hope to get into a couple of excerpts, right? So you can see how he wrote and how he put it all together. Let's go over here. I want to scroll through some of these. Some of these are for other. It's related, but the house. Let's go over here. Let's go to, okay, now, here's something, an article, Ancient Birth Control. These hieroglyphs from the 1850. Now, 1850 BC is about almost like 410 years, right, after the children of Israel, right, had come out of Mitzrayim, right? But here from the Kahun papyrus, it contains 3 contraceptive prescriptions, right? So even when we start to speak about even this whole abortion thing and other things, in nature there are herbs. Even we know of herbs that, some women, if they know how properly to use it, can bring on what they call the menstruation. So there was always ancient kind of birth control, so forth and so on, practices, right? But even that knowledge, ones and ones have become woefully ignorant of. So in ancient Mitzrayim, everything from crocodile dung to honey paste was used. Very, very interesting article, as we mentioned once again, brothers and sisters, but just to point this out. Here it says right here, at the bottom, it says Hebrew woman prevented contraception by drinking the cup of roots. Roots. Talking about roots, roots. What are roots? Actually, the first known oral contraceptive. Look at this. This article right here, right? Which this is by Ellen Frank, right? Look it up. Part 1, birth control and ancient practice. So there were always means of birth control. Just to point that out. Now, in today's world, with people dumbed down and on their selfish selves, well, and the products appealing to all of their selfish, desires, it kind of strips them of the ability, to know what is in this earth for what purpose. Hebrew woman, once again, prevented contraception by drinking the cup of roots, actually first known oral contraceptives. And anyone knows about herbs, I give thanks to some of the brethren and sisters over the years teaching I and I about herbs, natural herbs, and got to find out that many of I and I people, the Geechee, Gullah people, other people, in the country, in the islands, the Georgia Sea Islands, or even the islands in the Caribbean, and also parts of Africa already know about these. Right? Now, these was not known to the Europeans, and thus, those black women and other women of color who knew these things, they were libeled or labeled witches. All right? So when we see about witches, we got to know, well, who's who we're talking about here. The use of honey as a contraceptive is common to many cultures, including Egypt, including Mitzrayim. Now, when they study a lot of ancient Egypt, they look for these things and then they make up some new product and you say, oh, I love this product, right? But they're actually using ancient prescriptions, right? So right here, you can see this kind of example on the birthing stools, right? So right there, that could be Shifra, right? And Puah. Shifra and Puah. Because when we was in Egypt, we did as the Egyptians. We did do as the Egyptians. That's just the fact of the matter. So when he says he made them houses, this is what we sought to connect it with. They made them houses, temples, right? Places that they could practice, right, their Hebrew way, right, under the Kemetic, cover, for the life of the babies, the life of the newborns. So we see this right here, the Hathor, the Chet-Hor, Hathor, Chet-Harui, right? Or as we say Hebraically, the Para Aduma, the symbolic type of the Para, the red heifer, right? The red heifer. Egyptian woman gave birth sitting down. So gravity, or just weight. What is gravity? We say gravity is basically weight. Basically, as defining the principle of weight with mathematical numerology, right? So gravity assisted the baby's exit, permitting less forceful contractions. Doctors, or the Hakim Moch, probably did not assist at childbirth. This is exact what we're getting in the narrative, the Hebrew narrative in the translation KJV Exodus. The woman urinated on 2 test patches of emmer and barley seeds for several days. Isn't it interesting that Abib, where Passover begins in the first moon for the Hebrews in the ecclesiastical, liturgical year, is Abib, the April-May time, Abib. And Abib, similar to Abebe and Abeba, like Adis, Hadish, Abeba, new flower. We have Abib is the barley harvest, because it's the first to shoot up, right? So the first month that's named in the Bible is Abib, Abebe, right? So we have Addis Ababa in the modern sense, Addis Ababa, new flower. And then we have Tel Aviv. Tel is a hill or a heap of Abib, a heap of barley. So here it says the woman urinated on 2 test patches of emmer and barley seeds for several days. If either grew, she was pregnant or with child. If only the barley sprouted, she would have a boy. Now note the link. Even the month in the Hebrew, the only month that is given a name by Yahweh, hey, Yahweh, Jehovah, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem, the Holy One. Blessed be He, blessed be. The name is Abib. And Abib is the Pesach. So the Pesach, Chodesh, the new, the renewed, the new month, the new time. So if only the barley sprouted, she would have a boy. If only the emmer it would be a girl. How very interesting. And we went to the beginning of the book to show what predicated, what provoked, right, Hashem, Eloheinu, to do what he did at that time to Egypt because of the bad and the ugly, right, in this black on black, right, tragedy. That's what it was. It was a black on black tragedy. That's why John even reminds us in HaTorah, right, that we're not to abhor the Egyptian because we were strangers in his land, right? So that 430 years, right, we can mark at least the latter part of that 430 years as the epicenter when we start to go into the history, of it. But even if it was just happening just now for a year or just started to happen now, it is evil, it was rah-rah, all that rah-ah, right? It was evil and bad. Right? So ones and ones will try to give you all these kind of mixed up things from counterfeit Christianity and whitewashed Judaism. But let's look at the text, the narrative, and the evidence. Beer was a primary source for nutrition. Okay, we touched on this before, beer, right? Egyptian women used crocodile dung as a spermicide, right? It's testified in many of the documents, right? Crocodile dung was used, right? So who was the Pharaoh? Right? Who was the Pharaoh? The Pharaoh of the, not just of the Exodus, but of the infanticide, because that was infanticide. This is Hatshepsut, but there's some question of whether this is really her statue, because we see her also portrayed elsewise. In fact, even with more, let's say, Negroid or black, stereotypical black features, because these are black features as well. Right? So abortion in the Bible is abortion in the Bible. What were the reasons? What did Elohim think? Now, does the Bible prescribe abortion and examination of adultery tests? So we can get into that right there. We caught a few of these right here, a couple of these stills right here. But let's just move through this right here. We're going to return to this, right? Let's return to this right here, the Hebrew woman, right? Interesting when we look at different different archaeology that's not always put up front and center. There's some archaeology like the white Europeans and Anglo-Americans like to show us. There's other archaeology that they really don't show us so much, right? I think that's the Hebrew archaeology. So here we have a statue, a carving of a mother. Notice how they smashed out her nose and her features, but you can see her locks, her hair, right? And her type, right? Also right here, the stool, you notice the stool here, a type of a throne, right? Now, the connection right here of Torah, not Torah. Is there any connection there? We have to touch on that in another vlog. But here, the hippopotamus, so-called nature or goddess, right? The mother, the principle of the mother, right? And let's go over here, right? The principle of the mother. So the principle of the mother and child and the mother and son. We can see this even in these right here, how significant, right, this is. So it was all about a power move. That's what it's about. It's about a power move in ancient Egypt. Right? Even though by studying ancient Egypt, there was the Romu, the Renu, Romu, different ways of saying the ethnic people. But there were other people who also, it was like most societies, even if you came into that society as an immigrant or foreigner, if you learned the ways and believed in the culture, so forth and so on, they would include you. But the Hebrews, somehow we stood out. And we stood out not so much because of our racial identification in that sense, but because of our psycho-spiritual and religious and other some cultural things. So as you study the ancient Egyptian archaeology and writings, some things are tells. And we brought out some and we'll seek to bring out more. But the significance, right, of that man-child, that male child, as you can see right here with the side lock of Cherui, of Heru, of Horus, of the chosen. You can see this right here. Here. Even the young king or the young to-be king, he is wearing like that blue, the war crown. Right? Was he being prepared for? That's why when we go to the narrative again in Exodus, let's touch on this right here. In Exodus, go to this narrative right? Again in Exodus, right? It says up here, go to the very beginning of it. It says, now there arose up a new king, a new melech, a new administration, a new dynasty, right? Over Mitzrayim, over the two mitzvahs, upper and lower mitzvahs, Mitzrayim, who knew not Yosef, Iosef, right? Safnat Paanki, Safnat Paneach, right? Safnat Paanki, right? Who he claimed to know not Yosef. Because remember, Joseph, in a sense, was in ancient Mitzrayim was like a god. Joseph was a netcher. It was like a living netcher, one who was living and did the work of what they would conceive of as the god, because he was one who had the spirit, the ruach of Hai Elohim, of the true Elohim. But this new administration going to act like they didn't know. Now, the word know and to know, right, in the Hebrew is yada'ah, yada'ah. The word for knowledge is da'at. Right, and in modern sense, to say somebody's religious in Hebrew is da'ati, 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 one who knows. So we know that this had a religious, a spiritual, right, religious significance, right? And he said to Amo, to his people. Notice he didn't say to all the people. He said to Amo, his people, right? And see, his people is his direct circle, those who are part of the Paro, the Pharaoh, right? The great house. Behold, the people, notice what he says, the people of the Bnei Yisrael. See, the word children of Israel mean the sons of Israel. So it's behold, the people of the children of Israel, of the Israelites, are more and mightier than we. Because this shows that the Israelites had, through Joseph, right, had influence, right? We had influence, and that was affecting, you know, the religious observations of that time period in ancient Mitzrayim, in ancient Egypt, right? And then he goes on right here in verse 10 to say, come on to his people, right? Let us deal wisely. Wisely, right? Let us deal wisely. Hakam, 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 right? With them, lest they multiply. Right? Rabbah, remember we already saw that they was multiplying, right? Because the Hebrew midwives did not do, you know what I mean? Did not do as Pharaoh and as the Melech, the Molech of Mitzrayim, right? So this is a case where our people were being killed by an evil government. Even if it was an evil government in the best of places, right? Even if they were responsible for ancient civilization, it does not excuse that, well, we just lay down and just take it, right? And throw our children in the economy of Mitzrayim. No. But here, the Molech of Mitzrayim says, lest they multiply and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war. And that is very cryptic. What does he mean that they're going to fall out some war? War is just going to fall out? How is this going to happen? They, speaking about the B'nai, the people, notice the people of the children of Israel. The word children of Israel can also and also is translated elsewhere as Israelites, but literally it means the sons of Israel. So the people, we're speaking about the Hebrews, those who are under the Hebrew influence, right? It's almost like saying today there's many ones who might be under the Rastafari, right? You could say influence, or even under the Israelite influence, who may not be Israelite, or under the Rastafari, the influence, right? That influence, they will side with us. This is the danger, the existential threat that this new Melech is posing to his people. It's like when the president goes and he speaks the State of the Union address. And he's talking, we got terrorists, you know, these are potential terrorists. They are enemy combatants. They are sleeper cells, so to speak. Therefore, without any war, what's going to happen? They're going to join with our enemies. Is this the period after Ahmose had kicked out the Hekshals? The Hekshals, but the Hebrews were still there. Who were those Hekshals? Were they the Edomites, Esau and the Edomites? Since Esau and the Edomites, they had dukes and they had alufim. They had chiefs and rulers, right? Before the children of Israel, they had already entered into Seir and into their land and drove out the Horim, the troglodytes, the cave dwellers, our brother, the Edomites and Esau had done that already. By the time the children of Israel are in the wilderness trying to get to the promised land, it seems as though the Edomites already set up, because the Edomites were also down there in ancient Egypt as well. Right? So the Edomite connection with the Hyksos. Many ones haven't made that connection there because they're not studying the scripture right here. Right? They join with our enemy. So in their view, they would think that, well, in their view, we are Hebrews, right? And hek shaus, hok is statute, hok, and also the heka, right? The shepherd's rod, right? The hu and the heka, right? And also there's a word in the ancient ren komet that means magic. We have some ability to convince, right, even others of the Egyptians to join us and to join the Egyptians' outside enemies. Who were the outside enemies if they had just kicked them out? They just kicked out the Hyksos. Notice they kicked out the Hyksos, but the Hebrews were still there. See, the Hebrews were also Hyksos in the Egyptian use of that term as immigrants. You know, they got back to this nativist spirit. We see this happen in Britain, right? You know, during the race riots, you know, the skinhead riot. We see that happen in other places, like even in that cartoon, South Park. They're going to take out jobs. They're taking out jobs. They're coming to take out jobs. We see this also with the modern immigration stuff going on too, right? With Issachar, you know, with Mexico, right? And others, right? They join also with our enemies and fight against us. They felt threatened. This new king of Mitzrayim, in spite of whatever they had done, whether it was Ahmose or those after Ahmose, in regards to what they had done in driving out these enemies, so to speak, right? They still were fearing, right? Otherwise, why would he say this? So get them up out of the land. Look at that. And fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Now, if you read this, there's something that makes a big question mark. And fight against us, so get them. Are they saying get the children, the people of the Bnei Yisrael, the Israelites, out of the land? Are they saying that? Then why in verse 11 it says, therefore did they set over them taskmasters? Why are they going to go to taskmasters? Right? Now this is the first set of taskmasters. Right? Taskmasters. Some of the taskmasters were from our own people. Right, managers, so to speak. Some of the taskmasters from some of the native, the Romu, the native Egyptians, right? But then later on, they brought in Kushim, or Upper Egypt taskmasters. The name changes to Nogesim, right? To afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh, treasure cities, Pithom and Ramesses. Now, some say, oh, the Pharaoh of the Exodus was Ramesses. No, we're not those who ascribe to that it was Ramesses. No, it was not Ramesses. So there are some who have a very early date and a very late date. We point to the date approximately of 1440. Right, approximately 1440. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied. Think about this. The more that the Israelites had to work hard, right, and work bitterly and hard, it's like the more we were seeking comfort in our women and wives. Think about that for a moment, because it says that the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied. So the more, that the mind them were afflicted in the works that we had to do, public works, all kind of works, chain gang works, so to speak, right? The more we multiplied. That means that we had more children. So that means that the more we was afflicted, the more we took comfort in our wives, and our wives bore more children, and grew, and our number grew. We grew even more. And they were grieved. Can you say grieved? They were grieved. They were black like us. You always say, y'all black people. They'll look at you like you crazy. All right? That wasn't the point. They was not under white supremacy, white racism. They were looking at the real world. All right? And they were grieved because of the Bnei Yisrael. Right? And the Mitzrayim made the Bnei Yisrael, right, to serve with rigor, right? And the Ferek, Africa, that's where the Africa comes from right here, right? This word, right? Get into more of that right there. So we know the narrative from right here, and then it kind of doves right here. Let's just get this verse right here. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage. The word bondage, avoda, is service and labor. It wasn't just that they had to work, but it was hard work, hard labor. You know what I mean? In mortar and in brick. In other words, like people say, like, nowadays they have labor laws. There was no labor laws. Right? And all manner of service, all kinds of service in the field. Right? It's like when many immigrants come to the West or whatnot, some of them claim to be doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs. They have all these great degrees that they got back in their countries or other countries. But when they come to America, America don't care about that. They have them work as taxi driver or whatnot like that. Something similar to this, but much worse. And in all manner of service in the field, all their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Ferrek, right? Breaking, right? Because Afrika means to like divide and conquer in the Afro-Semitic languages, of which ancient Egyptian, right? The Ra'en, Kemet, right, is actually one of the languages that come from the Afro-Semitic languages, and it's the Ethiopic languages and the language, the Omotic languages are at the root, just to point that out. So Ethiopia does have a lot to share in the ancient history and the manuscripts. So now here this kind of doves around. So we basically went through this whole chapter right here where we have verse 15, and the Melech of Mitzrayim spake to the Hebrew midwives. Now he's trying another strategy. He couldn't work us to death, right? He couldn't work them to death. and they're working them so hard had an unexpected consequence. In other words, the Hebrew men didn't go home and, abuse their wife. No, they saw comfort, you know what I mean? And they had more children, more youth, and thus they grew even more. And now Pharaoh and the Melech is saying, hey, what do we do? You remember he says, let's deal with them wisely. Obviously, what they did the first time wasn't wise enough. Now they sought to destroy, right, to murder the Hebrew boys, the Hebrew men, children. This is serious, brothers and sisters. It's a very serious something, right? And what makes it more serious, and this might take a few of us and many of us some time to wrap our proverbial minds and thoughts around this right here, right? That what we had here is black on black for all intents and purposes. And not getting into the nuance and detail that not everybody had the same exact complexion. As we know, many black people, we have, a wide range of melanated complexions, right, and textures of hair. But for the most part, if we were to kind of zoom back into time travel into that event horizon, we'll be like, these are black on black people. Y'all be probably telling them about the white supremacy going to happen 5,000 years later. You got to stop this. No, we're dealing with human nature. You know what I mean? Whether it's black or white, as Ayabingi say, deaf to black and white down presses. All right, so it was nothing personal against Egypt because Egypt was black people. That's how these liars want to make you believe, make you be like Eve. All right, as we can see this right here, here's a mother. All right, here's a mother right here. We can even look at the features. Here's a mother right here. Notice this, right? Like, she's giving birth right there. Right, birthing stool. You can see another version of the birthing stool right there. We showed you this already. All right, let's go through this right here. Now, what we really need to talk about, just to connect it, right, then and now, let's talk about race. Let's talk about seed. Let's talk about zera, the zer. As we mentioned in his Massey autobiography, in the speech before the League of Nations, His Majesty says that the fascists, the Antichrist, was seeking to destroy, right, a seed, destroy a race, a zer. And that word zer, right, for seed, the word for seed equals the word for race biblically. So let's talk about race, abortion. Abortion, killing, a murder, bow. Oh, roots, reggae tune. What happened to them tune there? Abortion is the number one killer of black lives in the United States of America, right? More than what? HIV, more than diabetes, more than heart disease, more than cancer. Abortion snuffs out more lives than all other causes of death combined. Now, this is personhood education, Facebook. Yes, I. So let's just speak on this right here. Here, right, we are speaking in favor of the victim. Both the victims have been, many of those aborted, and many of those victims have been the mothers that have been made to be naive that was probably, now we know there's cases of ones being raped and molested and other things. This is not the point right here. They try to sell you that, like they sold women on smoking cigarettes. Right? Because they appeal to an area of your selfish desire, your selfish selves. It is reptilian psychology. It's reptilian psychology. We have this, the reptilian stem of our brain that appeals to that lowest common denominator. Right? In New York City, nearly 5,000 more black lives are aborted than are born. Right? Now, are these facts? Ones can't really dispute these facts because they are facts. They just basically say, don't talk about these facts right here. Right? So abortion, right, and race, abortion and the seed. Remember when the Molech of Egypt, he is targeting a certain seed. He's not targeting the seed because it's black people. Right? He's not targeting the seed because he say, oh, these are black people, or these are like so-called white Jews or some other. No. He's targeting them because of what they believe, how they live, and how that goes 180 degrees opposite of what him and his people are about. So we can ask the question, there might have been religious tolerance in ancient Mitzrayim at some times, in some dispensations, no doubt. Egypt had a long history, right? But not at this particular time. So abortion and race, for decades, abortion has disproportionately eliminated so-called minority babies, or, another way of saying is black babies. Is abortion systemic racism? Here, whatabortionreallyis.com says abortion is systemic racism. Let's ask this right here. What the Pharaoh, right, this new Sutenet, this new king in Egypt in Exodus, what he's doing, is it systemic genocide? Was that systemic Hebrew genocide? Right? He was putting this into the system, both the working system, notice the labor system, labor and birth. Notice these are two economical systems of the 9 areas of people activity: labor, right, and health. So you could say health on overall level, right, but specifically the birth, abortion, right. Basically, it was an ancient form of abortion. Throw them in the river. But then at that point of throwing them in the Hapeh, the Nile that was known as the Hapeh, and the ancient Mitzrayim had a Netcher or one of their Elohim Acharim over that particular river, this now brings a whole other dimension to it. Right? It's for us Hebrews, it's almost like some Bohemian Grove kind of a thing. You know what I'm saying? Black children are an endangered species. And what it shows is that black people, whether ancient, present, modern, or even future, as His Majesty say, it says, may be susceptible to that virus of intolerance. You know what I'm saying? Like people just get, it's not just black people, it's not just white people, it's a human condition. But this here, we can tell, is disproportionately targeting black people, already a 13-14% minority, right? Let's just say we're 13-something%. Black children are an endangered species. Here, this is from toomany-aborted.com, right? Do you think that in ancient Egypt there was any talk about this? Why they just want to kill off all our boys, all our male children? What that, the black population in America would be almost 50% higher. Oh, that's why. There you go, right there. It would have increased. Isn't it the same thing? It's what Dick Gregory really brings out in the Bible Tales book. He goes into a couple of the, kind of popular Bible stories, but then he both gives what the Bible says, and then he gives a commentary that speaks on black people in the Americas and the Caribbean. Right? Would almost be 50% higher today if it weren't for abortion. Right? Right, so here from Facebook, KeerNet on Facebook has this. Julian Bond from the NAACP chairman, he's saying, and today, black women exercise that right of abortion at a rate far exceeding their percentage in the population. It's a good way to say it. It's a good way to say it, Julian. Today's black woman, not your grandmama, your great grandmama, great grandmama, great grandmama. Today's black woman exercise that right, let's say it as it is, the right of abortion, right? At a rate, this is the point, at a rate far exceeding, far beyond their percentage in the population. That means if you're only half the population, you're doing twice as much, but you're about what 13%? They say with 13%, is that 13% the men and the woman? That means that the woman at least 9, maybe more percent. So think about that. 13%, they say with 13% of the population in America, so-called black people, especially us who have this 400-year, there's other black people, but they have a different history. We're looking at our story, our narrative, our history, right? So if 13% means all the black people, black men and black women, right? Male and female, right? Then that means 7 and 7 is 14, right? Right. So at least 7 to 8 to 9% of that 13% must be women. Because we already know that the women outnumber the men. Is that not true? Right? I'm talking about the natural, the born woman outnumbered. Because there's all of that. Remember I said Sodom, be as Sodom and as Egypt spiritually in Revelation. Abortion, a 10-minute procedure you have the rest of your life to regret. Well, some do. Some might not. And hopefully, may John have mercy, really, because we know that a lot of ones were conned into. That's why we use the example of smoking cigarettes. If you know the whole history, right, of how they fooled women into smoking cigarettes because, they looked at the psychology, the serpent psychology that cigarettes, right, is a male phallus symbol. So therefore, by women smoking cigarettes, right, they would have a phallus. They would have like a penis. They would have a phallic symbol. So the smoking, Edward Bernays and the tobacco, cigarette companies and the interests, they basically use that to get through to the psychology of women, right? And even though it has been found out that a lot of diseases, right, have come about by smoking Babylon cigarettes and everything like that by many women, not to mention black women, it's very hard and difficult, right, to stop because that psychology, because no one is addressing the psychology, right, the soul. Hopefully the Exodus, and right, remembering the Exodus and observing the Exodus, it gets to John's soul people, we black people who used to be known as soul people. Notice we're not called soul people anymore. What has happened to black people's soul? Abortion does not make you unpregnant. Right? It makes you mother of a dead baby. This is from savingspoint.com, right? So we should put a disclaimer, but there's something to be said, right? Freedom of speech. We're just reasoning right here, right? Especially about what happened with the Exodus in particular. And to see how the woman of the Hebrews, right, of the black beta Israel then, how they were able, like Shifra and Puah, right, to resist that. Also, how when the man were getting it, rough and, like with the rigor and the bondage and the slave type employment, right, the demeaning, degrading employment, they were seeking comfort in their wives because it says that, in spite of how they were afflicted, that they multiplied and they increased, right? Both increased in that sense and also others, right, came to the light of the Hebrews. Even others, that's where the mixed multitude comes from right there, right? By the time an unborn child is, right, 18 days, a baby's heart beats. By the time an unborn child is 42 days, brain waves detected. By the time an unborn child is 52 days, hiccups and yawns. By the time an unborn child is 8 weeks, all organs function. By the time an unborn child is 9 weeks, has fingerprints. By the time an unborn child is 10 weeks, can feel pain. By the time an unborn child is 12 weeks, right, can smile. Just a couple of facts right there. This is this Black Uhuru album right here. If you haven't heard the tune Abortion, check out the tune Abortion. It's a very interesting tune, Abortion. One of the messages, this is one of the major how Rastafari singers and players of instrument, not only in giving thanks and praise to our God and King, also pointed out social and economic and real situations in the light of prophecy. We pray that the singers and the players of instruments can once again, be able to walk in that spirit and that light. And it comes from the Torah, the scripts, studying, growing in grace. Many of the artists, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter Tosh, the rest of them, we knew definitely, based on their understanding of the Bible, they were able both to see the scriptural application, but also to connect it with what the people, right, John people and other peoples were suffering in real time. Check out this album right here. This is the particular album, Abortion, right? And it's interesting how you see the whole connection. You see the vial. You see the vial over here, the syringe, the vial. You see the prison industrial complex over there. You see the black woman is kind of just there in a kind of in a cognitive disassociative position. You see where the woman is laying back on the table with the doctor performing the abortion. You see the woman right there. She, in the center part, and you see the Rastaman at the top, and you see the pointing to the promised land as well. There's so much going on right there. Just to share that right there. Black Uhuru, check it out, the abortion, right, tune. And God bless the soul of Puma Jones, yes, of Puma Jones. That's our Afro-American, right, Rastafari, Black American Rastafari daughter right there, Judahite daughter. She passed away some years ago now, decades ago, but still her music and the message lives on. I caught this, like to share this on the outro. This is Martin Luther King Jr. How can the dream, quote unquote, survive if we murder the children? Every aborted baby is like a slave in the womb of his or her mother. The mother decides his or her fate. Now, these words are attributed to Martin Luther King Jr. or Martin, Michael King, they said his name was, but the father changed his name. But either wise, I'm not too sure if this is his statement, but I did some research and it appears to be so. Right? I didn't go deep research, but this is what Martin Luther King Jr. is said to have said. It's a very, very interesting statement right there. The last part of the statement, the mother decides his or her fate. Many of us as black Afro-Americans over here, and I'm sure others have heard this as well, where many of the matriarchs used to say, some might still do say, I brought you in the world, I can take you out the world. You better listen to me. I brought you in the world. I could take you out the world. I think some black woman hearing that now is like saying amen to that. But yeah, but that just shows to whom more is given, more is required. So because of that right, the mother decides. The mother decides. So every aborted baby is like a slave, in the matrix, in the womb of his or her mother. The mother decides his or her fate. And then we saw this as well, right? Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He said the Negro, the Negro cannot win if he is willing to sacrifice the futures of his children for immediate personal comfort and safety. Wow. Is this the statement of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.? How come they just tell us about the dream, I have a dream, I have a dream? Well, first of all, as we first disclosed, that wasn't even his words right there. He basically was borrowing what some blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman had said, and some of his fellow ministers sought to discourage him, so that we're here to focus on these things, not on dreams and everything. But that's the part that they kept running for decades and decades. Now that we're into, this social media time, information, information superhighway, it's to go to and fro, knowledge is increasing, that people are finding out the man stood for so much more. But it makes us ask the question, why haven't these particular statements been as much circulated? Because they went against the COINTELPRO on steroids, on New World Order steroids. He says the Negro, the Black, the Judahite, so-called Black American, cannot when, if he is willing to sacrifice the futures of his children, the futures of his children for immediate personal comfort and safety. Right? And then this one here again, right? Every aborted baby is like a slave in the womb of his mother, in the matrix. Now, when we look in the Torah, we'll see even in Exodus, connected with the Passover, right, is an emphasis on the firstborn, the one who opens the matrix. We have that 3 times in the KJV version of the Bible. Matrix movie. Hail up Sophia Stewart, mother of the Matrix, Sophia Stewart. In the Matrix movie, right? The Matrix movie. But we have in the Torah, in Exodus, the mention of the Matrix in 3 places, right? He who openeth, right? The one who openeth the Matrix. So check that out as well, right? And then we have the liberal tards, the liberal tards, the liberals, whether they're black or white, male or female. She says here, this is Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or whatever her name is. She says a woman has a fundamental right to make this choice for herself. You see, this is like what the Nachash, the serpent, said in the wilderness. In the garden. In the garden, right? The serpent in the garden, not the one in the wilderness. The serpent in the garden, right? What the serpent in the garden said, right? In a sense, it basically confounded what was already true. That's why they call it a deceiver, a deception. Of course, yes, woman always had the fundamental right to make the choice for herself. But because women have been kind of dumbed down on the real knowledge of their bodies, the ancient knowledge of even the herbs and other things from nature, the nature of things, sometimes some women might not even know when their time really comes. They get so caught up in this world, the bright lights and everything. So to be able to administer some holistic cures and remedies, of course, woman has that fundamental right to make this choice for herself. You know what I mean? It's like when the serpent said, and you shall be as gods. According to what I read in the scripture, Adam, right? Adam, who's his father? Adam is a Ben Elohim. He's a son of God already. So that's redundant. So basically this is redundant right here. It sounds nice, but only if you're ignorant, right? About the context of the statement. Covert genocide. So here's what we point out. Covert genocide. A plot to use birth control, abortion, sterilization, and gun control, so-called, right, to exterminate the black race. It might not appear from individual cases. Somebody say, well, this person used birth control because, they was experimenting, didn't want to get pregnant or whatever. Okay, we understand that. It can apply, yeah. Abortion because something happened, so forth and so on, can't afford the baby. Okay, we can understand that. Sterilization, I guess there's some scenario you can understand that. Gun control, because look, the bad people got the gun. It would make sense that if the good people can protect themselves, the bad people would have to maybe go elsewhere or mind themselves, because as they shoot, they can get shot, right? But combine all of this together, right? Endangered species, right? So not just looking, right, back, right, thousands of years. There ain't nothing new under the sun because we see it going on, right, in some of the same way. Do these statistics bother you? Leading cause of death among so-called African Americans, really black Americans, Afro-Americans, right? Black Americans since 1973. Now it's interesting, 1973, if you think about the godless and creeping coup against the line of the tribe of Judah, what occurred, the great apostasy, the rebellion against the King of Kings. This is all around this same time period. 1973, right? The beginning, 1974, the epicenter, 1975, it done, it's sealed up. So the leading causes of death among black Americans, right? Especially over here in this 400-year experience. Because other black people from Africa, because of community and because of certain cultural links and identity and their own history, tend not to fall into this as black Americans who have a 400-year history. So a lot of times we get confused. We think when we see other black people, they are our color, but they're not our kind. Right? Their whole community and how they came over here is different than us. It doesn't mean that they're not our enemies because of that, but we have to recognize that we should not confuse who we are. We got to know ourselves. So here it says AIDS, right, since 1973. Now, the statistics probably have changed somewhat more, right, but we have 227,695, right, deaths among black Americans by AIDS. Violent crime, estimation here, 329,313. Accidents, 408,723. Got to put a big question mark around accidents. Accidents that happen to black people. Remember, after all we went through in the Americas, all the abuse and everything, and took a slave master licking and still kept on ticking, that somehow accidents, 408,723 estimated. Cancers, right? The cancer and cancers, 1,324,250. Heart disease, right? Weak-heartedness, right? Because heart disease, we might just think it's just food. It's a combination of things. It's not living Yahweh, truth and life. 2,503,789. Wow. Now notice all these are separate. So imagine we added all these up together. Think about the population. Abortion now, compared to the AIDS, violent crime, accident, cancer, heart disease, abortion is 14,500,000 estimated, right, since 1973. Now just add up all those numbers right there. Think about that. Add up all of those numbers right there. Wow. Just to add up all those numbers right there. What was that? 2, 3, at least 3, 4, 4, about 18, almost about 20 million. About 20 million right there. Right? Roughly, a third. Well, it's more than 6 million, right? Huh? Okay. Right? What do you call a black woman who gets an abortion? Right? Oh, this is supposed to be a comedy, a funny meme right here. A member of Crime Stoppers of America. Wow. Now notice that right there, you might think it's just talking about black babies, boys, right? It's talking about girls too. You know what I mean? So, it looks nice and everything. We laugh at it. But what is it really doing? It's dumbing us down. Right? It's dumbing us down, right? It's like wearing on our immunity. It's making us more susceptible to the Babylonian sickness. This is where black lives, like any lives, should start mattering or mothering, right? And this is the thing that, in spite of what we see with the biblical narrative, some of those basic things, right, to show that even though that was bad, what we're experiencing now is worse. But the principles to get us up and out of this, right, is here. In 1997, a girl born to an, quote, unfit, end quote, drug-addicted mother and abandoned by her father was Planned Parenthood's perfect target. You know who she is? Right? Would later become arguably the best gymnast in the world. Isn't that interesting? Right? Isn't that interesting? Right? So it's not always on the mother. Sometimes it's on both. But actually here she's abandoned by her father, and her mother was labeled unfit, drug addicted. 3 easy facts about me, right? About the fetus, or what do you say, the fetus or the unborn, or the, what it says, mother with child, right? The child in the mother. I am a human being. I am alive. No one has the right to murder me. Right? No one has the right to murder me. Now, I know this goes against the popular train of thought. Anatomy of a feminist, for feminists. Anatomy lesson for feminists. Right? The woman's body. Right? Pointing to the backbone, the coccyx bone. Right? The front part of the body, not a woman's body. A baby is not a female body part. It's an interesting meme. A baby is not a female body part. This future citizen of the world, as they say, right? But if as an Israelite, future citizen of Israel, deserves rights and is not your own female organ to pick and choose. Stop saying my body, my right, when it's not your body. A baby is an entirely separate person, a precious human being, not an elective organ. Now, here's something very interesting right here. That whole my body, my right. It's not your body. Now, of course, many probably are arguing right now. How you say it is my body, so forth and so on. But doesn't the baby have a body? Just a question. Doesn't the baby have a body? Is that baby body your body? Right? See, this is why when they say pregnant, they use the term pregnant. I learned this on YouTube, taught me this, right? YouTube actually, and some of the other, like where you put in the different tags on the old YouTube, maybe a decade ago, when I chose pregnant woman, it came with an open parenthesis kind of a thing where it says a disease. I said, oh, wow, wow. And then I thought, well, actually the term pregnant is not even used in the KJV Bible. It uses the terminology a woman with child. So when a woman was so-called, quote, pregnant, it was actually a woman with child. So if people continue to use that biblical, ancient, and it's more in tune with other ancient languages, terminology and translation, a woman with child, I'm with child, with child, with child, points out that it's not like the woman's body, so to speak, right? Even though that body may have been developed in part from the woman's body, but also it's the seed, right? It's also the seed of the man, the womb, or the seed of the womb man. But this is interesting right here, just to say that if we start to say a woman with child, that terminology, just looking at that terminology, a woman like with child. If a woman says, yeah, I'm with child, right? That right there is a consciousness that reverses this psychobabble curse right here that we see, right? All right. So this we thought was interesting too, right here. Kill him, right? To kill him is cruelty. So like in ancient Mitzrayim, if we were to kill a dog, they might think, oh wow, you killed a man. You're a cruel person. What kind of person kills Anpu? Anpu, little old Anpu, Anubis. Right? No problem with killing Anpu, Anubis, right? Yeah, big problem with doing that. Killing him, murdering him is cruelty. But then what about a child? Right? What about a baby? Right? Kill him. This is choice. So how can this be cruelty? Right now, if someone says, well, I decided to abort the dogs, the bitches, the female dogs, little pups and everything. So I say, you are cruel. You could have given up for a dime. You could have done, that's cruel. They might even arrest you. Remember what happened to that ball player? Mm-hmm. What happened to him? For the logic impaired, your body, someone else's body. Not your body, not your choice. Abortion is murder. Is abortion murder? Well, of course, they probably will say in their laws, in the laws of the Gentiles, it's not murder. But then if you killed a dog, they will say, you killed that dog, you murdered that dog. And the way their laws are going right now, you'll probably be in jail. The truth, your body, not your body, not your body, not your choice. All right? So, got that basic idea right there, brothers and sisters, not to leave that on there too long right here. This was an interesting one right here. I was born at 1205 in New York. New York, a city so great they had to name it twice. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. In New York, it is now legal to have me killed at 1204. In other words, in New York City, now one can have an abortion rate almost up to the moment. Wow. Will you still be pro-life after she's born? Some who seek to counter it, after she's born or after he's born. They play around with that. This is a fetus, this is a baby. They try to play around with that. This is a fetus, this is a baby. They playing word games. It's the serpent logic, right? So let me get this straight. You had a negative experience of your abortion. So for that reason, you want to ban the practice for all other women, even those who have no regrets. This is what some of the psychobabble is. So let me get this straight. A woman can have an abortion, get pregnant on purpose after that, and people still think she's amazing. See, here's the thing is that a lot of women may not be woke to this yet. But after they live a life and do whatever they choose or think that they have been given choices to do, right? You know, it's that real regret that comes in when you know better. This is why knowledge, you know, this is why they try to stop and block. You know, I don't know how this video is going to go across, but U.S. abortion patients, right? Income, 75% poor or low income. Religion, 62 religiously affiliated. Ain't that something? Family size, 59% already have a child. Age, 60% are in their 20s. Only 12% are teens, of which 4% are minors. This is from the Guttmacher Institute. Race, they say 39% is white and 28% is black. Now somebody says, see, white people have more abortion than black people, but black people is only 13% of the population. So look at that dynamic right there. You see what I'm saying? Only 13%. So of that 13%, 28%, right? While white people are the majority. So those numbers might seem close because one is 39% and one is 28%, but then you have to do the percent in the percent, right? The percent in percent is that 28% is vis-a-vis being 13%, of which the others is a large majority. So think about that. How will the percentage come out then? 25% is said to be Hispanic, 6% Asian Pacific Islanders, and 3% is others. 3% is others. Um, we don't really need to go through these numbers. I just leave these numbers here for a moment. You can pause it. The number one killer or murderer in the black community is not the HIV deaths, is not the homicides, diabetes deaths, accidental deaths, cancer deaths, heart disease deaths, or any or causes or any it says or any of the 285 522 causes of all annual deaths combined. It is the 363,705 deaths of black lives via abortion annually. Now, just to think about an average over, I don't know how many, but just even to think about an average over 300,000 every year. Every year, you know what I mean? It's very significant. This makes this spiritual Egypt bondage, right, that we are going through and experiencing in the end times of the Gentiles much worse, right? Much worse than before. What does this woman say? Is that like the Ankh there? Is that like the Ankh there? Right? We represent black and third world women's the most exploited and oppressed in the human race. Third World Women's Alliance. Okay. Well, that wouldn't be bad if y'all had your head on right. You know, that's how it should be, right? But you only will have your head on right when you recognize the truth of being an Israelite. The most dangerous place for an Afro-American woman, Afro-American, is in the womb. Right, this is this meme that really caused so much. People, I didn't have to pull it down. People really got, you know, they jumped out of this stuff because it's conscience, right? It's conscience, you know, it's conscience, right? Conscience matters. So here, brothers and sisters and brothers, know we started out with Egypt right there, but we have to show ones and ones that because these words are spoken, you know, concerning the Israelites, it's still true to this day. Right here, check out, download the Passover Haggadah, the Seder, worthy is Jalan. Brothers and sisters, more on that, more to come. This is Wyndham Yarden right here, and I approve of this message. It's an Exodus, right, movement of Jah people message right here. Yes, I come out of her, my people. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom.